Welcome to Stripped Simple. I'm your host, Olivia. Let's talk about self-care and simple beauty. What you put on your skin is really important. I'm going to give you some ingredients, and what you do with them is up to you to decide. Mix and match as you desire. You are your own alchemist. Simple care, simple ingredients, simple beauty. Strip Simple Beeswax. Welcome to the final episode of Season 1. Thank you for sticking with me. The topic I'm covering today is beeswax. This is not a plant. The last several have not been. It's a natural wax produced from the abdominal cavities or the abdominal glands of bees to make cells to store honey as well as to protect their larvae. But I thought it would be a really cool one to cover because it is made from bees. It is not actually considered vegan. So if you ever see vegan products and it has beeswax, they are not actually vegan. Or if you would like to make vegan products or you have a vegan friend, just keep in mind that beeswax is not considered to be vegan. So beeswax is harvested from beehives by beekeepers or whoever is gathering honey, and it is cut off because it's a cap over the cells that have honey in it, and it initially it's cut off in order to release the honey or to collect the honey. It initially starts off clear, but as more pollutants and as pollen is added, it turns darker and darker. And as pollen is introduced to it, bees pollinate at least 80% of the world, so I thought that might be a cool thing to share. What are some of the benefits of beeswax? There are a ton of benefits. Beeswax is somewhere between like cocoa butter and jojoba, which is also a wax. It's a pretty incredible substance, and it tends to be, there are three colors. It can be white, which is its purest form, or it could be bleached. It could be opaque, or it can be yellow. So usually those are the three colors that you have for beeswax. And it is really good for skin conditions. It's good for eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis. It's really good for babies. It's safe to use on their skin, especially for diaper rashes. Similarly, it's also good for fungal infections and inflammation that is causing rashes or things to come up on your skin. It is super moisturizing. When you get it, it's in a very solid form. It smells slightly sweet. It's like honey. Usually you can get it in a block, or you can get it in little beads, so you can get it in already pre-made beads, so it makes it easier to melt, because it does take a little while to melt down when you're adding it to things, and it does impart a very nice sweet scent into it, so it does smell like honey. And I love honey. I use it every day in my smoothies or when I'm making myself hot chocolate, so I thought that this would actually be very cool to cover. So it moisturizes skin, but it also is pain relieving, and that I thought would be like a surprise, because you wouldn't think that something that you practically have to cut or melt down, or that you can't really even put on your skin right away without melting down or without adding a lot of oil to, would be able to do that, but it does. And even though it's a wax, it is also very good for clearing acne, because it has strong antiseptic and strong anti-inflammatory properties. So it does help reduce any swelling that you might be experiencing. I'm not saying that it will reduce it a ton, but you will see a bit of a difference. A lot of lip balm has beeswax in it as well, because it is very healing for dry and cracked skin. And it's also very moisturizing, so it will seal it in and protect that skin. Beeswax, like cocoa butter, also reduces stretch marks. This is why I was saying it's somewhere between jojoba and cocoa, just kind of smushed together and honey scented. Jojoba does not have much of a smell. Now, the emotional uses for beeswax. This one is a little bit like Epsom salt because it's a carrier or because it's like an amplifier. So beeswax candles themselves are actually very good to burn and better for the environment than, say, soy wax or different types or paraffin candles, which are not as clean, because beeswax, if it is 100% beeswax and, organic or natural, is a lot cleaner burning, and it releases a very soothing honey scent. So it's a very just sweet, mild scent that gets released into the air. And that in itself is very relaxing, and it helps to relieve stress. But you can also make your own beeswax candles, which is very simple. If you have a bit of like thread that you can also coat in wax, you can then, or not thread, a candle wick. It's a candle wick that is waxed, and you can add it into a beeswax candle on the bottom and then pour your beeswax on top. If you add essential oils, just like your jojoba and just like your Epsom salt, you will have the aromatherapy effects added onto the relaxation and the stress relieving qualities that beeswax has by itself. What can you make with beeswax? Well, we've touched on several things already. So you can clearly make candles. I will say that because beeswax already has a scent, you can get them without, but I think that beeswax would be very processed, so I'm not actually sure about that. But because it already has a scent, when you are scenting it, just make sure that the scent matches. For example, orange, if you used an orange essential oil or citrus essential oil, it would probably smell good with beeswax, but maybe another scent would not. So it's just experiment, as I've said with all of this. Play with it, have fun with it, experiment to your heart's content, because it is for you, it's for your own self-healing, it is for your own enjoyment, whether you're gifting it to somebody else, because enjoyment is also gotten from that. So you can make makeup with that. I've seen solid blushes that have been made with beeswax and with like a oil or another wax like jojoba. You can make your own beeswax wrap. So what people use to cover food or to cover containers, sort of like saran wrap, but more natural for the environment. There's definitely ways to make that at home, and there's DIY kits. And those are some of the things, and you can add it obviously to your own body butters, to solid lotion bars, to massage bars. You can add it to bath melts, which are very nice, though not very fun to clean up. So there are tons of options that you can add beeswax to. And if you're wanting to solidify something, I think a good rule of thumb is 1/4 of the amount of beeswax as it is to oil. So if you wanted to make a balm and you just wanted to use oil and beeswax, like a lip balm, for example, you could put in 3 tablespoons of olive oil, a little bit of vitamin E, the scent that you're using, and 1 tablespoon of beeswax, and it would solidify it. It would make it a consistency where it is solid to the touch, but still melty. And depending on how solid you want that texture to be, or how malleable you want it to be. So if you want it to be a little bit oilier, you'd put in a little bit less beeswax, and you would adjust it as you wanted. So when was beeswax first discovered? You can also actually, before I come back to that, make crayons. It's a very good way to make safe crayons for your kids. And they actually stand up very well. So if you decide to make a red crayon, for example, beeswax are very sturdy, and you can melt them back together if they were to break. So there's like really no loss there. So if you wanted to make safer toys for your kids, you could use beeswax. Now, how old is beeswax, or when was it discovered? I thought this was really cool because this might be the oldest example out of all of the episodes that you have listened to thus far. According to my research, beeswax dates back to over 7 millennia ago. So BC. So that's like before Christ, or just BC if you don't believe in that, which is over 9,000 years ago. And that was back when humans were beginning agricultural lifestyles. And it was found on pottery. It was used as fuel. It was used as a makeup ingredient, and it was used in religious ceremonies. It's suspected actually that it might have even been older than that. It's just that there's no conclusive proof past, around 9,000 years ago. So people used it as medicine in addition to the uses that I listed before for like waterproofing things. It was used as medicine. It was used for candles. It was used to preserve food like cheeses. It still is to this day. Wax tablets. They were used in writing. It was used for, and that's probably also part of the religious ceremonies. It was used to strengthen thread, to make bows. Another cool use is cavity fillings. So they used beeswax to protect the cavities in their teeth. And it was used also as like a lubricant for doors and windows and as a furniture polish. It's still kind of used as a furniture polish now, or sometimes on hardwood floors. So a couple of cool facts about beeswax is that, like honey, it does not actually go bad. So honey is one of the only foods in the world, if not the only, that does not go bad at all. It might solidify a bit, it might get hard, but it is still edible. And beeswax similarly does not go bad either. And I thought that was actually really cool for something that's produced from the abdominal glands of bees. And really, mostly during like the first maybe 6 to 20 days of their lives, because after that it degrades. So like they do a lot in those few days. And so what does happen instead when beeswax starts to get very old is that a powder called bloom comes to the surface, like a white powder. And what happens is it rises to the surface and you can just scrape it off, you can blow it off, and that bloom is from the oil that has risen to the surface. And another weird fact about beeswax is that bees actually have to eat 6 to 8 pounds of honey to produce 1 pound of beeswax. Did you know that? Because it is protecting their honey and it's protecting their larvae. I guess they need to, but it's interesting that they need to eat so much of it just to produce that much. And they can reuse the beeswax in their hives. So, thank you for tuning in with me thus far on this journey for stripped simple ingredients. Remember, you are your own alchemist. I'll see you next time.